Welcome to a Fresh Perspective podcast, catering to the latest in ingredient trends, consumer insights, and food news. Brought to you by Corbion.
Hello, and welcome to a Fresh Perspective podcast, the podcast where we talk about everything food. Today, we will be discussing the consumer's emotional response to purchases. And this is really interesting to me because I have always heard that almost every single purchase that someone makes is an emotional response. So here to chat with me about this today is Eric Mittenthal. He's the Chief Strategy Officer of the North American Meat Institute. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just dive in. My first question is more of a general question. And what are the biggest challenges meat and poultry producers and manufacturers are currently facing?
Well, there are many. I think the biggest challenge overall is labor in the marketplace, and there's lots of concerns out there, and people are being bombarded with more broadly messages about the healthfulness of our products. Talk about concerns about animal welfare, concerns about our environmental impact, food safety, and worker safety. There's so many things that are out there. That
never-ending list.
Exactly. Yeah, it really creates, in a consumer's mind, a lot of confusion about the different messaging that they're hearing, and about how to feel about enjoying animal protein, and so there's great opportunity for us to make an impact on that.
Sure. So the consumers, you would say that the way that they're impacted then is confusion because of the enormous amount of challenges, and really, I almost wonder if it's an informational problem as well, right? You get information from 20 different places. It says 20 different things. You don't know who to trust. You don't know where to turn.
That's absolutely true. Yeah. I mean, I think it is an issue of information overload. That's not unique to meat and poultry. It's not unique to food. It's the world we live in today with all of the sources that are of information that are out there. Just look at what's happening in politics. That's a whole other issue. But information overload creates confusion and lack of trust, and we want to try to work through that and help people give them permission to consume products they enjoy and confidence to do that. That's the thing. People want to make their own choices. They want to be responsible for their own decisions. Mm-hmm. And so even with all that information at their disposal, it's ultimately their own decisions, and they want to feel empowered to make those.
Right. And I think a lot of consumers look at the packaging to give them more information about those kinds of things. And when I think about the emotional response to that, I think it has to do so much with what it is you're feeding your family if you're a consumer. So, I go to the grocery store and I can buy chicken, or I can buy organic chicken. And part of me says, for my family, I should probably buy organic chicken. It's better for them. But then, I've heard or read articles about how organic stuff can have, more parasites and things in it. And so it's like, well, is that a better decision? I really don't know. And so I go by my old standby, which is, whatever's cheapest. Whatever. But it does feel good to walk out of a grocery store knowing, okay, I've made good decisions for my family. They're going to have good snacks this week. I'm going to be able to make healthy meals. So I can definitely see how, you make those decisions based on emotion, but you're also kind of basing them on things that you don't know if it's true or not.
Well, and there are basic factors that people, that drive the majority of food purchasing decisions, and that's taste and cost. Historically have been the two most important considerations. And I don't think that's necessarily going to change anytime soon. But when you get beyond those two, there are a lot of other factors that play in. And so you're weighing a balance of all these different things in your consideration. And that includes convenience. It includes healthfulness of a product. It includes whether that aligns with your values, if you're doing the right things for your family. All of those things weigh in balance with that taste and price element. And so you want to make sure that you're tilting the scales in the direction that gives people confidence that they can enjoy the products they want to enjoy.
Exactly. So from your perspective, all these challenges we've been talking about, how does that truly impact the consumer's emotional connection to their food purchases?
Well, I think food is a very emotional decision in many ways, has only grown in that regard in recent years. I think the more information people have makes them more emotional. I think we've seen a lot of polarization around many different topics. And so, it plays in with food as well. Consumers, they don't want to be told what to do, is really key. I think they want to be empowered. And so that's our strategy, certainly, is to empower people to be confident in the things that they want to be purchasing.
That makes sense. I think, even when you think about, like, for example, my husband and I watched a documentary about fishing. I mean, it was a Netflix documentary, right? You learn all kinds of things from that channel of information. And we didn't eat fish for months. And and my other emotional response is fish is healthy for me. That's a good protein, right? But we were like, oh my gosh, we can't contribute to this overfishing or unethical ways of raising fish. I mean, it was volatile for us. It was like an immediate change. And I even felt bad about eating the fish that we'd already purchased and bought, like it was in my freezer. So, I wonder about those emotional responses too. Not just, am I feeding my family healthy things or whatever, but you're also with information, you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much packaging here, maybe. Right. And we try to live a sustainable life and try to reduce our footprint as much as possible. And so should I buy this, even though it's maybe a healthier version or a cheaper version? And so, I mean, I completely understand what you said at the beginning, the confusion, because I personally feel it.
Yeah, no. And I mean, it goes to the amount of information that's out there, and it is challenging. People also want to listen to the sources that they trust. And typically the first source that they trust most is family, and their community and people who they engage with. Certainly people are getting more information from documentaries and things like that. And,
don't judge me.
No, but it's not unique in that regard. And those documentaries are very powerful because they feature doctors and they feature other people with really strong academic backgrounds providing messages that seem very trustworthy. But there's a lot of misinformation out there coming from those sources as well.
Right.
And it makes it a challenge to identify what are the sources of information that are most meaningful and trustworthy to me or you. And so it does require a certain amount of critical thinking to think about who you're hearing from and does this really align with my values? And I think in today's society, and again, this isn't unique to food or agriculture, we tend to just run towards the beliefs we had and run towards the things that make us comfortable. And so changing people's minds is very difficult. So that's one of the things that becomes a communications challenge, is sticking to, bringing people out of the things that they are out of their comfort zone. In the case of animal protein, I mean, poultry, our benefit is that we are people's comfort zone, and the products that we produce are very much within people's comfort zone. We want to reinforce that these are comforting products that you've enjoyed throughout your life, and that 95% of Americans enjoy. And so there are really good reasons to continue to feel comfortable about these products.
That's great news from a great source. So use our critical thinking here. So let's talk a little bit about transparency, because people that are actually starting to look into this a little bit more. And I don't know if COVID had anything to do with it, because food became like this really intense focus during COVID because you couldn't go out to eat anymore. So it changed so much. And we talk about it on this podcast all the time. But now it's almost like people are starting to ask questions about the supply chain. Have you seen any changes in how that visibility is important, or how companies are responding to the request for visibility to those things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the term supply chain is known, but I don't think it was known.
It's a buzzword now.
Yeah, that it is today, or that it's become over the last year. Supply chain certainly is something that is on many people's vocabulary when it wasn't previously. I think the trend over many years is that consumers want to know about where their food comes from. And that has existed for a while now. I think the pandemic continued that and maybe amplified it even more. And companies are doing a lot of things to bring that to the forefront. Transparency is really the impetus for a lot of the protein packed work we're doing in helping to make products and how they're produced more transparent and more information about more data-driven information about the practices that are going into producing the animal from farm to fork. And so companies are making a lot of commitments, taking a lot of really strong steps to do that. And it's not even necessarily just on the package. There's things on the package. There are things on websites. There's so many ways to access that information. And so it goes back to somewhat information overload. But if people want it, it's very much there. And so companies are more and more putting it out there and letting people have that information that they're seeking. And I think we're going to continue to see that as a trend.
I did read an article about, like you said, farm to fork. There was a pig farmer, and I believe it was in Asia somewhere, that was tracking their pigs by facial recognition. And when you bought pork, you could scan it and see your pig that it came from. I thought that was a really interesting way to use digital technology to provide a little more transparency. I don't know how successful it was or what happened, but it struck me. If you were a company today, and this is where your bread and butter is, right? In the protein and the meat and poultry industries. What are some good steps that a company can take in order to increase some of that visibility and sort of help with the emotional, feel good part of purchasing?
We look at that question very holistically, thinking about all the different concerns consumers have, and they are intertwined in people's minds around animal welfare and environmental impact and nutrition and food safety. And so companies are all the time prioritizing their own investments and opportunities around improving in all of those areas. The first thing to do is to take baby steps and evaluate, what are our opportunities? What are ways that we can make improvements in a way that are meaningful to our consumer base and our customer base? And so, taking those initial steps and really investing in those, and then, hopefully you see success out of that, but then continuing down that path of also evaluating, where else you can go as well. It's a journey. It's not necessarily a flip a switch and all of a sudden you make a change. It's really something that you look at over the long term, and something that we at the North American Meat Institute are really focusing on helping members with, doing so in partnership with our great supplier partners to provide the resources and education on consumer trends and different opportunities that the companies have to make improvements in the areas that they see as most important to their own company.
Great advice, great information. Thank you for joining me. We are out of time, but it's been a pleasure, and we'd love to have you back.
Thanks. Anytime. Really appreciate it.
All right. Till next time, preserve what matters.
Thank you for listening to a Fresh Perspective podcast brought to you by Corbion. Please like, subscribe, and follow us on thebakerstake.com and thecorbioncut.com. Until next time, preserve what matters.